Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. The 209th day of the Russian invasion of Ukraine has passed. The parliament of the separatist republic in Donbass said it will hold a plebiscite this week on joining Russia. The occupying authorities of the Kherson Oblast also want to hold a referendum. Meanwhile, in New York, the annual session of the United Nations General Assembly began, fully devoted to the war in Ukraine and its consequences for the world. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that the counteroffensive by Ukrainian troops against the Russian army was still continuing. We are stabilizing the situation, holding our positions firmly, so strong that the occupiers are really panicking. Well, we have warned the Russian soldiers in Ukraine have only two options: to flee from our land or surrender. The collaborators have similar options. Either they will try to escape or they will be convicted according to the applicable Ukrainian law. Mass graves with at least 450 bodies in them were found in Izium, liberated by the Ukrainian army. The first exhumations began on Friday. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov called the mass crimes by Russians Ukrainian staging. Russian policy has not changed for 100 years. First they murder the civilian population, and then they try to blame someone else, just as in Katyn. According to the Ukrainian authorities, Izium police station was transformed by the Russian army into a death camp. Investigators are conducting a review. Notebooks with a list of detainees kept by the bandits have already been found, as well as torture devices, including electric cables. Every cell where people have been held is being examined. DNA samples and fingerprints are taken, and a database of evidence for the court is being collected. The evidence of war crimes will be supplemented with data from mercenaries from the Wagner Group. Their website was hacked by the Ukrainian cyber army. The website of the Wagner Group, which gathers Russian criminals in the war, has been hacked by the IT army. Ukrainian IT specialists obtained all the personal data of mercenaries from the Wagner Group by hacking its website. Every executioner, murderer and rapist will be severely punished. Revenge is inevitable. Convicts from Russian penal colonies are recruited into the Wagner Group. Over one-third of these prisoners are people convicted of murder. Among the people who are recruited is this army of criminals that is to support the Russian army. There are sex offenders and murderers. A referendum on the incorporation of the Luhansk and Donetsk Oblasts into Russia is to be held in the self-proclaimed separatist republics. A similar vote is also to be held in Kherson. All the plebiscites are scheduled to be held from the 23rd to the 27th of September. Almost every day I receive calls from social organizations and ordinary citizens asking us to hold a referendum on joining the Russian Federation as soon as possible. Taking all this into account, the leadership of the Kherson Oblast and its administration have decided to prepare and hold a referendum on the accession of Kherson Oblast to the Russian Federation. Meanwhile, yesterday, a regulation of the Ministry of the Interior and Administration was published in the official journal, which restricts the entry into the territory of Poland by Russian citizens travelling for tourism, cultural, sports and business purposes. Stopping the issuing of visas to Russian citizens is the way that must be made for Europe to be safe and for the pressure on Russia to be greater. The presence of Russians in Europe is a risk factor. From Monday, the Baltic states and Poland began to apply more stringent procedures for issuing visas to Russian citizens. A total of 39 citizens of that country were refused entry to Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia. Earlier today, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres urged rich countries to tax the windfall profits of fossil fuel companies and use that money to help countries harmed by the climate crisis and people who are struggling with rising food and energy prices. Addressing world leaders at the 193-member United Nations General Assembly, the climate activist Secretary-General stepped up his attack on oil and gas companies, which have seen their profits explode by tens of billions of dollars.
Our world is in peril and paralyzed. Geopolitical divides are undermining the work of the Security Council, undermining international law, undermining trust and people's faith in democratic institutions, undermining all forms of international cooperation. We cannot go on like this. There is another battle we must end, our suicidal war against nature. The climate crisis is the defining issue of our time. The fossil fuel industry is feasting on hundreds of billions of dollars in subsidies and windfall profits, while households' budgets shrink and our planet burns. Excellencies, let's tell it like it is. Our world is addicted to fossil fuels, and it's time for an intervention. We need to hold fossil fuel companies and their enablers to account.
While Guterres again pushed developed countries to tax the fossil fuel windfall profits, This time he also used his platform to spell out where the money should be spent.
It's high time to put fossil fuel producers, investors and enablers on notice. Polluters must pay. And today I'm calling on all developed economies to tax the windfall profits of fossil fuel companies. Those funds should be redirected in two ways: to countries suffering loss and damage caused by the climate crisis, and to people struggling with rising food and energy prices.
The United Kingdom has passed a 25% windfall tax on oil and gas producers in the North Sea, while United States lawmakers have discussed a similar idea, though it faces long odds in Congress. Polluters must pay, Guterres said. He also said multinational development banks must step up and deliver, and that helping poor countries adapt to worsening climate shocks must make up half of all climate finance. Yesterday, a powerful earthquake struck western Mexico, killing at least one person, damaging buildings and knocking out power, and sending residents of Mexico City scrambling outside to safety. One person was killed in the Pacific port of Manzanillo when a department store roof collapsed on them, the government said. Authorities also reported damage to several hospitals in the western state of Michoacan, near the epicenter, which was in a sparsely populated part of Mexico. One person was injured by falling glass at one of the hospitals, the government said. The magnitude 7.6 quake hit shortly after 1 p.m. near the western coast and close to the Michoacan border with the state of Colima, where Manzanillo is located, the United States Geological Survey said. The quake was relatively shallow at only 15 kilometers deep, which would have amplified its impact. Mexico City Mayor Claudia Sheinbaum said that there were no immediate reports of major damage in the capital after the tremors, which rumbled through Mexico on the same day that destructive quakes had battered the country in 1985 and in 2017. At the same time, we are thinking that this will happen again, and I don't know if we could generate it. These things are inexplicable. What happened again was inexplicable. Even I don't understand it. It took us all by surprise. I don't think many people understand it. I feel grateful because we are prepared for this specific data. The Earth warns us that it is here and settling every year, now and then, because it shakes all the time here. Although we citizens are trained to act in an earthquake, our emotions go beyond our limits, even though we are prepared. Even if you tell people what to do, people get desperate because they have already experienced the trauma of seeing their loved ones dead. People are terrified. The National Autonomous University of Mexico, one of the country's most prestigious seats of higher learning, said that there was no scientific explanation for 3 major quakes on the same day and attributed it to pure coincidence. Thousands of people were killed on the September the 19th, 1985 earthquake, and more than 350 died on another September the 19th earthquake in 2017. Before announcing the death in Manzanillo, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador had said that there was material damage near the epicenter. Images posted on social media showed buildings badly damaged. Mexican authorities said that the seismic alert had sounded nearly 2 minutes before the quake struck, giving residents time to evacuate their homes. Still, some people in the capital struggled to grasp that it was a real quake, as the government had already sounded the alarm earlier in the day as a practice exercise commemorating the past earthquakes on the same day. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.